where do great business ideas come from? Is it books like this? Is it your friends around you? Like, where exactly do they come from? And maybe you're an entrepreneur out there and you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, I want to start a business. Like, what kind of business should I start? And I'm going to tell you today what kind of business you should start, where great business ideas come from, and then also 6 other tips that I've learned bootstrapping 2 different businesses from 0 to 7 figures. So, where do great business ideas come from? In 1975, when a pretty well-known guy now, but at the time a nobody named Steve Wozniak was invited by a friend to the Homebrew Computer Club in Menlo Park, California. And at this event specifically, he was shown a new version of something called the Altair, which was kind of like this personal build your own computer kit thing at home. And they had this revolutionary new thing called a microprocessor. Now, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to get into the details of what that is, but Steve is. And Wozniak essentially saw this thing and it blew his mind, because in his mind, immediately he went to all the different applications that this new piece of software could solve as far as like creating personal computers. And in that exact moment, like, he was struck with inspiration. Later in an interview, Woz said that the whole vision for a personal computer just popped into his head that night. He started to sketch out on paper what would later become known as the Apple I. So just like that, just a little blip of inspiration, and all of a sudden, boom, one of the biggest companies in the world sprang out of that idea. So where does that come from? Like, where does any great inspiration come from like that? Like, he was in it, it just hit him like that? Like, what is that? I love the way, this other book here, I love the way Rick Rubin describes it in his book called The Creative Act. He basically decides, he explains creative ideas as sort of like a cloud in the sky, and that as ideas come and they float across the sky, they're unique, and then they rain and they become something different, and then they become water on the ground, and then they flow back into the ocean, and all the while the idea is moving and shifting and changing, and then it goes back into the ocean, and then it gets evaporated back up, and now a new idea has formed based on all the other experience of that idea, and that's what's sitting up there. And that's what Woz essentially saw, was that he saw a person that was building fun little hobby kits, Altairs, and he said, oh, I can revolutionize personal computing with that microprocessor. He took previous ideas and combined them together. I think it was Pablo Picasso that said, good artists copy and great artists steal. You already know what business you should start. The idea is in your head. You just need to look around and see the problems around you and say, hey, what 2 things do I know really well that I can combine together and create a new company? That is where great business ideas come from. So that brings me to the first of 7 tips today. When you have an idea, you got to capture it and then go take action on it. And that's exactly what Woz did. And now Apple Computer is born. In fact, go ahead and tell me in the comments below, what business idea have you captured and started to build? I'd love to know. So what do you do once you've captured the idea? Like, how do you actually take action on it? Like, what happens then? The first thing you do is you get a friend. Wozniak had a friend, and that friend's name was Steve Jobs. Steve was this unique blend of hippie culture and capitalism rolled up into one, sort of enigma. Jobs and Woz were the perfect co-founders of any company. They complemented each other's temperament. They complemented each other's skill set. It was like peanut butter and jelly, man. They went well together. I love the Jim Collins analogy where he talks about getting the right people in the right key seats inside of a bus. What's a key seat? It's any seat that can have a adverse positive or negative effect on the business, right? So back in the day, I used to own a barbecue restaurant. It's not really a big deal who I would hire to wash dishes in the back of the house, because if I got that wrong, no big deal. Maybe one shift of dishes are messed up. If I was hiring a general manager and I hired the wrong general manager, that is a huge misfire, have a huge negative impact. The right general manager would have a huge positive impact on the business. It goes both ways. Step 2 here is to surround yourself with the right people. Now that you have the right people around you, like, it's obviously time to start planning the business, right? We need to build a business plan. Well, that would be advice anybody that's never actually built a company would tell you to do. And I will caveat this with, like, yeah, if you're getting a loan, especially if you're trying to get an SBA, like 7A loan or something like that, like, yeah, you're going to have some sort of business plan. You got to play ball. But it's not going to actually help you grow your business at the end of the day. Business plan is the fun middle thing you do that's not actually that helpful at the end of the day. It usually gets hung up on a wall or put in a file on a bookshelf somewhere. Nobody reads the thing ever again, like after it was made the first time. I mean, do you honestly think that 2 nerds in California between Jobs and Wozniak took the time to write out a full business plan before they started a company that would ultimately become worth $4 trillion? Like, absolutely not. Like, the only reason they even came up with the name Apple, like how much planning went into that, was that Steve was always obsessed with weird fruit diets, so fruit was always on top of his mind. And he also was working at the time part-time for this apple orchard, picking apples off of trees. Like, they didn't put really any thought to that. They didn't know what this thing would become. They just took action and stuff started happening. And I'll tell you that taking action piece has played out in my life, in my entrepreneurial career. I've, like I said, bootstrapped 2 different businesses and didn't have a plan for either one. But what I would do is take the next right action based on the information that I had. I would see how that decision played out, get new information back, and then go make another decision and take new action. As you experience things while you're building a business, you're kind of finding the next right move. You know, there's this thing in manufacturing called just-in-time manufacturing, where the products will show up just as you need them to put onto the assembly line. That helps keep your cost of goods and inventory down. And it avoids things going bad and getting lost and broken and spilled because they're just sitting around doing nothing. It's the same thing with education. That's the same thing with planning. Like if you overplan, if you overeducate, like that information is just sitting in your brain, disappearing and rotting away. And all you did was spend a lot of time to collect all that information to not actually be able to do anything with it. Versus if you take actions, you learn things, and then you decide, oh, I can improve this now. I can make a better decision. I can go learn the right next thing because I know the next thing I actually need to go do. That's way better system than to just try to plan it all out perfectly on paper. No plan ever works out the way you think it will. Look, I can hear you in the comments below right now. You're like, okay, cool, Chandler. I've got the idea. I got the team. I'm ready to take action. But like, what action do I actually go take right now? With High Beam Marketing, you know, we work with hundreds of business owners. We are directly involved in growing 20 different brands right now. And I will tell you that the number one thing I tell most founders is that you have to learn how to sell your product or your service. Nothing else matters. Until you hit $1 million in revenue, nothing else really matters from like a strategic planning, what should I do next standpoint, other than getting more revenue in the door. At the end of the day, revenue is the thing that will cure all ills. It gives you the resource you need, which is cash, to be able to go hire agencies like mine or hire other smart people or, you know, do anything you need to do. But so many people don't want to go out and sell for some reason. I think it's a fear of rejection. I'm not really sure, but like you got to go out and sell. I mean, ironically, when I started High Beam Marketing with my co-founders, like we didn't actually put any money into the business. I was adamant that like I had made this mistake with my first business where I was playing around doing all the fun stuff like planning and logo design. And instead of going out and selling the product that we had, so with High Beam, I was like, no, we're going to sell before we do anything else. And so we went out, found our first customer, got money in the door, and then we went out and filed an LLC, got a real bank account, all the things. It was so funny. We couldn't even get paid by this person in a traditional way. We had to open up like a business Venmo account because we didn't actually have anywhere for the money to go officially. So like, that's how important sales is to what we do. And that's why I'm making this video now. I'm ultimately trying to help you out so that I can sell more marketing services down the road. Like, you are always selling when you start a business. Never not selling. Like, always be selling. Always looking for a way to grow revenue. And by the way, a little side note that was not in the outline for today. If your business is not growing, it is dying. Businesses have to grow. Like, you have to be able to raise prices. You have to be able to hire more people, pay them more money, give them opportunity to get promoted. If your business is not growing, it is dying. There is no plateauing in business. Like, a plateau is just early stage death. Like, you have to be growing. And so the earlier you adopt that mentality in your mindset, the better chances you have of building a successful business. Like, building a business is incredibly difficult. And the reason it's so difficult is because it's hard to get people to buy something that is a relatively new product or service from a relatively unknown company. I mean, even back to this Apple example, right? Jobs, after one of these other homebrew computer club meetings, meets with a guy that owns a computer shop, and he sells him the first 50 units. Before Apple, they only had one board. They had nothing. And they went out and sold 50 units. And they were going to have to figure out how to build them all after the fact. But, like, they sold. And then they went and did they figured out all the next things. So, like, you got to do the same thing. Sell. I don't know why I sound like a weird, cheesy 80s movie, but, like, it's true. Got to be selling. Always be selling. But then what happens if you go out and try to sell it, but then nobody actually wants to buy it, right? You know, Wozniak, when he was developing the technology for the Apple I board that they sold, he was working at Hewlett-Packard, which is HP. And he was a good guy. He worked at Hewlett-Packard during the day. He'd go home, have himself a little TV tray dinner, and then go back to the office at night to tinker away working on the Apple product. He was a good guy. He still is a good guy. He wanted to make sure that he did the right thing, and he felt like he had to offer that product to HP since it was developed in their building with one of their employees, with some of their resources. So he went out and scheduled a meeting with his managers, walked them through the technology, walked them through the idea, and the managers kind of went back and forth, and they were on the fence about it, but ultimately they decided that they didn't want or couldn't yet sell this hobbyist product, that it was too small of a market for what they were doing at that large of a company. And so they let him go. So HP, which is struggling today, could have owned Apple. Not everybody's going to get what you do. I mean, it's one thing for a massive company like HP not to really get a small idea from somebody. And so it's almost easier to accept that they didn't buy the thing. But what if somebody close to you doesn't actually believe in what you're trying to build? They don't get it, right? I'd like to introduce you to a guy named Ron Wayne. Let me know in the comments below before I tell you here if you know who Ron Wayne is, because I would love to see if you guys get the predictions right. Ron Wayne was the original third co-founder of Apple. Stephen Woz gave him 10% of the company because he could communicate with Woz and he had previous experience as a business owner. He had started like a slot machine company or something. Now, the problem with his slot machine company was that it ended up going out of business for a number of different reasons. Steve Jobs had this ability to do what was called the reality distortion field. He could get people to believe in a better future. You know, he was really that strong of a visionary. And so he convinced Wayne to join them and to work together, right? Wayne and Jobs, I believe, met while they were working at Atari together. So Wayne comes in, he talks to Woz, he talks to Jobs, he tries to help them get on the same page, get some operational stuff going. You know, that was kind of what he was going to be doing, is the systematizing of their business as they scaled. And so they wrote up their original articles of incorporation, they sent it into the state of California, and that was it. They were officially in business and they were off to the races. The craziest thing happened. 11 days later, Wayne goes back to the state and he has to file an amendment. And he says, I am relinquishing control of my 10% of the company, and it will be owned 50-50 by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. He gave away 10% of the company 11 days after starting it with those guys because he, to his words, said, I could not go on the ride with them at the time. I just felt like it was too much of a risk. Really what was happening was Steve Jobs was coming back and saying like, oh, hey, we're going to borrow this money, we're going to scale, we're going to go. And like some of that reality distortion field Steve had washed away, and reality set in after the fact, and Wayne goes like, I can't do this, and he pulled out. What do you think 10% of Apple would be worth today? I mean, just billions and billions and billions of dollars. Like, it's a $4 trillion company. Like, he would have billions of dollars. Last time, the author, Walter Isaacson, for this biography of Steve Jobs, checked in with Wayne. He was living in Nevada. He was living off of his Social Security checks, and he was playing the penny slot machines. He says he doesn't have any regrets, but like, I just find that hard to believe. So at the end of the day, people inside of your circle aren't going to get what you're trying to do. They're not entrepreneurs. They're not wired like you. They may not see the vision. They may not believe in the vision. They may believe in you, but they don't want to actually go on the ride. You have to learn how to let all that go, build your own network, build your own circle, and go for it. So instead of backing out, Jobs and Woz decided to go all in. They decided to put up or shut up. Jobs sold his van. Woz sold this expensive calculator they had, and they scraped together $1,300 to be able to fund the first purchase order of 50 units. They went all in. They made it work, and ultimately, it became Apple. You know, so it's hard to see the future today for a lot of people. You got to ignore that. Put up or shut up. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. Go do the damn thing. So you're all in. You commit. You're ready to put up or shut up. You got the idea. You got the people. You got the selling. You got it all. You're ready to go. But then something happens to you mentally, which happens to every human on this planet, no matter what you're doing. And it's something called imposter syndrome. That little nagging voice in the back of your mind that creeps in and goes like, you're not good enough. You can't do this. Jobs had a lot of faults, but confidence, charisma, showmanship were never one of them. You know, early on when Apple was just in Jobs' dad's garage, he hired an answering service to be able to take messages and then forward them to his mom in the house so that he could get them and go take action on them, just to seem more official. Within the first year, they started getting featured in different press publications, and they were in this hobbyist computer magazine. And Jobs described himself as the director of marketing for a company that had no official employees because Woz was still full-time at HP, and Jobs was not getting paid because they hadn't delivered anything yet. And he was also quoted in that article as being a consultant to Atari, which is another status symbol thing, which he never actually consulted for Atari. He was a low-level employee at Atari. At some level, with your ethical appetite guiding you, you're going to have to be full of it. You're going to have to believe in the thing that you're doing before reality sets in. That's just part of it. Like, I'm not telling you to lie or do anything insane, but we all have imposter syndrome. Even me having 2 companies and all the things, like, I still have imposter syndrome that I have to deal with every single day. It's just something you have to get comfortable with. You know, I hope this video makes it really clear that any normal person can start and grow their own business. Like, you don't have to be some crazy whatever to start and grow an incredible company. But what you do need to know how to do is market your company. That's why I'm encouraging you to watch this video right here, which is a culmination of 15 years of work on my part where I break down the 10 mental mistakes that every new entrepreneur has when it comes to marketing their business. If you can figure out how the marketers, the best marketers like Steve Jobs think, which is what is in this video, then you will have more business than you know what to do with.